right. Let's talk a little bit about the ventral and the dorsal respiratory group, okay? The VRG and the DRG. This is of course the brain. Remember the little bump on the front of the brainstem there, the pons, and we have respiration is controlled by these three: the ventral, dorsal, right? Ventral respiratory group and dorsal respiratory group, okay? In the medulla, in the pons there. And normally it's going to set the respiratory rate at about 12 to 15. That's the average respiratory rate for people, okay? And what happens is that you have unless suppressed by morphine, the DRG has stretch receptors that modify the rhythm and chemoreceptors. Basically, they keep check, right? Remember we talked about the brainstem. It's where so much of the autonomic nervous system is controlled. And these keep your respiration. They'll speed up when the CO2 goes high. They'll slow down when the CO2 goes low, okay? The VRG sets the rhythm and the rate, normally about 12 to 15. In cooperation with the dorsal respiratory group, and it talks to the pons too, okay, the pontine respiratory center, right? Now, what is it that makes us want to breathe? The most important thing that makes us want to breathe is PCO2, okay? I want to say that again. The most important thing that tells us to breathe, what makes us want to breathe, is how much CO2 we have in our bloodstream. Okay? That's what it's based on. All right? If the CO2 in our bloodstream is high, it makes us want to breathe. If the CO2 in our bloodstream is low, it slows down our breathing. The most important determinant of what makes us want to breathe is the PCO2. Remember P for partial pressure of CO2. How much CO2 there is. Okay? Normally, PCO2 is going to be about 40 plus or minus 3 millimeters. Okay? When the CO2 goes up, right? It's going to join with water. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. And you're going to get bicarb and hydrogen ions. So when the CO2 goes up, the acidity, okay, or let's do it this way, the pH. The pH of the blood goes down when the CO2 goes up, right? You have chemoreceptors, right? Chemo for chemicals, and they send signals, right? Remember, you had the baroreceptors for your blood pressure, but you also have chemoreceptors for chemicals, and the chemical is CO2. And when the CO2 goes up, the blood becomes more acidic. When the blood becomes more acidic, it sends signals, right, to the VRG and the DRG, and it speeds up our breathing. Okay? Okay. Now, let's talk about this. Hyperventilation. Right? Hyperventilation, you blow off CO2. Yes? Now, when do people hyperventilate? When you're a kid, you hyperventilate because you want to go underwater and swim the length of the pool. Right? So you go under and start swimming, right? So your blood oxygen gets really high and you blow off the CO2. The problem is that if you blow off too much CO2, you forget to breathe. and you can pass out underwater and drown, right? That happened many, many, many years ago from a kid from Dalhart. I can swim the length of the pool and back in one breath, right? And that's what happened. Okay? So hyperventilation. Now, hyperpnea, breathing a bunch, right? How is that different? Well, that's different this. If I'm running a 5K, yes, I'm breathing a bunch. I am breathing a bunch. But guess what? I'm burning oxygen and I'm blowing off that CO2, right? And so it's a totally different situation. You don't mess with your blood chemistry by doing that, okay? But if you hyperventilate, then you will. Yes? What's the treatment for hyperventilation too? Breathe in a flat paper bag. What do you do when you breathe into a paper bag? You're rebreathing the same air, and the CO2 that you're blowing out is going right back in, and you get your CO2 up, right? Usually, what is the reason, or why do people do that? Why do people hyperventilate? Anxiety. Oh, yes. I had a lady in my office, she started hyperventilating. Oh my gosh. I had to run in the back room, right? And I had a sack of nails from Bartlett's, you know, a little bitty sack of nails. Dump the nails out and run up there with the paper bag and put it over her face. Right? Yes. If you don't do that, then what will happen is eventually they'll pass out. And then their breathing will return to normal. Okay? So, but anyway, that's why it's not a good idea to do that, because you're blowing off a lot of CO2, and the CO2 is what tells you you need to breathe. Okay? Exercise can increase ventilation 10 to 20 times, called hyperpnea. But hyperpnea does not alter the blood oxygen and CO2 levels significantly. Okay? Acute mountain sickness. Acute mountain sickness, right? When we go from sea level up over 8,000 feet, right? You get the headache. You can get short of breath. Makes you nauseous. And you can get dizzy, right? It's very common. When you sleep a couple of nights at altitude, then you feel better and you become acclimatized. And we talked about your kidneys produce erythropoietin, EPO, and that'll make your red blood cell count go up, right? So last weekend, I don't know what happened. I did not feel good and such. Had a headache, miserable, hiked in for 3 miles, and in the night, bad. And the next morning, got up, climbed the mountain with my partner, came down, and then the last 3 miles out were a killer. I did not feel good. If I walked too fast, I got nauseated, like I was going to throw up, so I had to sit down and stop a couple of times and such. I got the altitude, and I don't know why. And it's really odd. I'm usually way stronger than my partner. He's a great, big, powerful guy, but not this last weekend. He had to baby me down the mountain, and it's usually me doing that for him. You know, he's usually the one that has to stop and catch his breath, and he's usually slower to get up on top of the mountain. But anyway, so I'm hoping this weekend I'll feel better. And since it'll be the 4th trip, hopefully I'm going to get acclimatized. Usually by the end of the summer, I can run up the mountains and run down them. I'm very fit. But the first one's usually really hard. Okay? Okay. See what? Let's stop there for today and talk about the midterm. Okay? Okay. Again, the midterm is going to be Monday. Another thing I worked on today, right? So let's talk about the lab midterm, all right? Okay. Now, the quiz we had tonight, and we're going to have one. Don't let me forget to do that tomorrow. We got to do the quiz, right? Because you want 100, okay? It'll pump up your grade, right? Everybody. Okay? So don't let me forget to do that. Quiz tomorrow, okay? So, but our lab midterm, yes. You got to do the blood types. And you got to know the difference between systemic and pulmonary circulation. And you got to know the blood flow through the heart. Okay? And there's also a RH question. Okay? So remember, blood flow through the heart, blood typing, systemic versus pulmonary circulation, and there's a RH question. And that is what's going to be on your lab midterm. Okay?